Boys, we're back, and I did say in the previous episode or parts, whatever this is going to be, I did say we're going to be milking this series because today we got part 2 of the 5 hard truths that the UFC fan base just can't handle. If you guys haven't watched part 1, I'll have it linked, up here or in the description. Make sure your ass goes and watches that video after this one, because I'm not gonna lie, that first episode, banger. Let's get into this one now. Again, we have 5 hard truths that the UFC fan base, the general UFC fan base, just can't handle. There's definitely going to be, some smart, above average IQ people watching this video, so they will agree with me, because I have some of the rarest takes on YouTube, and most of the time, 99% of the time, I'm 100% right. So with that being said, let's go into the first one. I don't care how great, how amazing, how dominant your title run was. I don't care how great your legacy is. If you fail a drug test for PEDs, performance enhancing drugs, you are automatically out of the GOAT conversation. And we're specifically talking about PEDs. We're not talking about like a Nick Diaz who got caught for having marijuana in his system. We're talking about performance enhancing drugs. So we're pretty much talking about Jon Jones right now. Jon Jones, I do not have him as my GOAT of the UFC simply because of the dude's, past with PEDs. Picograms or not, this dude popped multiple times for PEDs. Some of his best wins have a little asterisk beside it because of PEDs. For example, the rematch with DC, snapping a 4-year decision spree on DC, because he was on that sauce, no contest, and coincidentally enough, he was able to TKO DC in the 3rd round. Then we go up a year from now, this dude still has some lingering picograms in his system where they had to completely change the venue because they wouldn't sanction that shit because they knew this dude was cheating against Gustafsson. Again, weirdly enough, another knockout win. Then maybe he hopped off from there. Maybe he hopped off a little bit because coincidentally, he fights some weaker competitions. He fights Anthony Smith, goes to the decision. He fights Santos, decision. Dominic Reyes, decision. Then he moves up to heavyweight. I mean, it took him 3 years to move up to heavyweight. You're telling me he wasn't juicing then? Because right away, first round submission over Cyril Gane. Comes back, the K over Miocic. I don't think he needed to be on sauce to beat someone like an old man Stipe, but automatically out of the GOAT conversation if you're popping for drugs. I don't understand how anyone can agree with this. Like, we go look at any other sport. If you get caught with PEDs, not only are you completely out of any conversation of being the greatest, but you're also, for a good portion of sports, you're just banned from competing ever. But in MMA, where someone could literally die because of this. No, you can still be the GOAT. You can still compete even though you're a serial PED abuser. But I don't know anyone who would argue that, I don't care how great the legacy is, if you fail a drug test for PEDs, not to mention multiple times, automatically out of the GOAT conversation. Let's go down. Number 2, DC. We were just talking about my boy DC. DC is the most underrated and overlooked legend, and his resume in the UFC deserves way more credit, way more love than what it currently has. I remember, I don't know why everyone hated DC, but there was a point in time where nobody liked DC. He was coming back fighting Jon Jones, saying, I may look like a crackhead, but I've never been a crackhead. Everyone was hating on him for that line. Like, I don't know what the issue was with DC, but this dude, if Jon Jones wasn't taking PEDs and just wasn't in the UFC, I don't know if he beats a non-PED Jon Jones, but if Jon Jones isn't in the UFC, DC's the light heavyweight GOAT, and arguably top 3 GOATs, top 3 fighters in the UFC. Because let's just look through this guy's record. The only losses on his record is Jon Jones the first time, unanimous decision loss. Okay, it is what it is. Then the no contest against Jon Jones. So it doesn't really count. We look at this dude's career. He came into the UFC, fought Jon Jones, ended up losing. It is what it is. Jon Jones has to vacate the belt because he's doing retarded shit. He wins the belt over Anthony Johnson. Submission win. Fights Gustafsson. Submission win. Title defense. Fights Johnson again, submission win, another defense. Goes to fight John Jones. We know that he was juiced to the gills, no contest. So that fight doesn't happen, even though, yes, my boy got head kicked to the Shadow Realm. We go up. Volkan Oezdemir, another title defense. So then after that, okay, my boy's moving up to heavyweight. Stipe Miocic, first round KO. He knocks out the heavyweight GOAT in the first round with a nice short hook. Then defends his belt against Derek Lewis, submission win. And then, at that point, he's a little bit older, and Stipe just adjusted to that title fight in the fourth round amazingly, and ended up getting that TKO. And then after that, it's unfortunate that DC was so old going into the trilogy with Stipe, but this dude is an all-time great, one of the all-time best fighters. And if we're taking people out of conversation for using PEDs, he is the GOAT of light heavyweight, just because, like I said, you can't be the GOAT if you're on PEDs. Moving down, though, we got the boy Ankalaev, Magomed Ankalaev. Now, I feel like this is going to be a very hot take that I don't know if people are going to necessarily agree with, but there is an argument to be made. If you look into this, there's an argument to be made. And, of course, whenever I have a chance to hate on Magomed, I'm going to do so because like I've been saying for months now, close to a year now, fuck Magomed. All my homies hate Magomed. Now, Magomed's wrestling really isn't as good as he claims. And he just doesn't have a shot against Pereira. I'm going to say this. Magomed Ankalaev has a 25% chance of beating Pereira. And people are always like, yeah, but, this dude's a crazy wrestler. This dude's going to wrestle fuck Pereira. When has he ever done that? Please point me into a direction where he wrestled anybody. Yes, he has the takedowns, but the wrestling aspect of it, please just show me where he can do that in the UFC. Like in his UFC fights, where has he done this? We'll run through some right now. His debut against Paul Craig, he ended up getting submitted. And even I don't know what people are saying. The Marcin Prashino fight, not really. We even go into the Ion Kuntalaba fights. Again, no wrestling there. Nikia Krylov, okay, maybe a little bit. Volkan Oezdemir, I don't see anything in any of these fights, in the Thiago Santos, Anthony Smith, Jan Blachowicz, Johnny Walker, or the Ratchik fight that shows me confidently that Magomed Ankalaev is this next level wrestler in this light heavyweight division. Is going to be taking down Pereira left, right, and center. People are acting like this is going to be a Khabib versus the real estate guy himself, Ali Aquinta. That's what they're making it to seem. They're making it seem like Ankalaev is going to be able to take down Pereira at ease, keep him there, ground and pound, or submit him. I don't see. Go look at his fights. Maybe you guys aren't remembering, but go look at, if you can't watch all of his fights, go look at some of his last few fights and tell me where you see him being this dominant wrestler, because he simply just isn't. I think people are more on the side of, Pereira is so new to MMA, but you have to remember this dude practically since the beginning has been training with one of the best ground game, best wrestlers in light heavyweight, Glover Teixeira. You're telling me the boy Glover Teixeira isn't trying to teach Pereira everything he knows with the ground game? I think Pereira's ground game is going to be extremely underrated. Yeah, but what about when he fought, someone like a Jan Blachowicz? Okay, yes, still pretty new to MMA at that point, but still, I think Pereira will be able to dominantly win against Ankalaev. People are also saying, yeah, freaking Israel Adesanya took him down. How is Ankalaev not going to take him down? This is that Israel Adesanya fight compared to now, I just think Alex Pereira is I think this version of Alex Pereira would beat the shit out of the 2022 version of Alex Pereira who fought against Israel Adesanya. That's just my opinion. Let's go down. Number 4. This one, I don't know if anyone can disagree with this, but Michael Chandler was never that good. The fact that he lacks so much fight IQ, and honestly just IQ as a whole, is just an excuse for, I want to make a fight for the fans. That's just an excuse. His whole career has been wasted waiting for Conor McGregor. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Let's just look through his UFC career so far, and let's see if there's been any high-level IQ moments from Michael Chandler. Dan Hooker fight, that only lasted 2 minutes and 30 seconds. There's not enough time to base it off of. Then we go to the Charles Oliveira. Do we have to get into Charles Oliveira fight? The first one. Round 1. This dude could have been champion. And then literally 19 seconds into round 2, gets knocked out. The fight IQ, I swear. The Justin Gaethje fight, same thing. Fight IQ. He had Justin Gaethje wobbled. If he was a little bit more patient, had that fight IQ, he could have put away someone like a Justin Gaethje, and that would have been a phenomenal name on his record. Tony Ferguson, I'm not talking about the Tony Ferguson fight, even though, yeah, he got caught by Tony Ferguson in the first round, ended up coming back and knocking him out. It is what it is. Dustin Poirier, exact same thing. He had Dustin hurt and could have had him out of there. The second fight with Charles Oliveira, it really showed the lack of IQ and fight IQ in that fight. Mainly it could have been because he was out for so long. I also just think it just shows the lack of improvement on Michael Chandler compared to someone like a Charles Oliveira. Let's go down. The fifth and final thing, Israel Adesanya will never touch gold again in his entire UFC career. And it was obvious that this dude is or was on the juice. You can't tell me that him showing up to UFC 253 against Costa, arguably at that moment the toughest test for him, showing up with the biggest titty in the world, you're telling me that shit's natural? And yeah, he can go out and be like, oh, it's because of all the weed and shit. If that was true, Nick and Nate Diaz would have tits the size of Francis Ngannou's third leg, let's be honest. And yeah, and I think the never touching gold one is pretty self-explanatory. Let's say he does get past Imavov, which I think is gonna happen. He's not beating Sean Strickland, he's not beating DDP, and I don't even think those guys are going to be champion by the time Izzy fights for the belt. I think Chimaev will be champion. And again, Chimaev is running through Israel Adesanya. Those are the 5 hard truths that the UFC fan base just can't handle. Best believe part 3 is on the way. Let me know in the comments below, do you guys disagree with any of these takes? Because like I said, they're hard truths, but they're truths nonetheless. So let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching to the end of the video. There's really not that much else left to say, except for I will see you guys in my next video.